Hey, welcome to Lingua Franca, a channel dedicated to languages, linguistics, and philology. I am Jorge, and today I will tell you about one of the most fascinating theories in the study of languages, about pi. But what is pi? A pi? An Indian guy? A number? Well, pi, Proto-Indo-European, is a hypothetical reconstructed language. It is believed that people spoke the language from 4500 BC to 2500 BC, although this varies depending on the source. It's still debated where exactly this language was spoken and who used it and spread it. One of the most widely accepted theories is that of the Kurgan people. Many scholars believe the Kurgans were the people responsible for spreading the language across a vast area of Europe and Asia, through the long-distance migrations made possible thanks to horse domestication, wheeled vehicles, and herding. Okay, so it's some random language that some random people spoke long ago. So what? There's not even a record of it. Here's where it gets interesting. This language is believed to be the common ancestor of the majority of the dominant languages of today. English? It can be traced back to Proto-Indo-European. Spanish? Pi. German, Bengali, Russian, French, Pashto, Italian, Hindustani, Polish, Greek, African, Latin, Farsi. Boom! Pi. Many scholars throughout history have helped reconstruct the language by identifying similarities in vocabulary and structure among several languages spoken whilst they lived. This is called comparative linguistics, and it's what's helped shed light upon this mystery of a language long gone that, nonetheless, is still out there today. Here's how they did it. When you take sets of words generally known to change very little throughout time, which is the case of numbers and family members, you will find a striking similarity among many of the languages present in Europe and Southern Asia. In English, we have the words father and mother, which are unsurprisingly similar to those of other Germanic languages like German Vater and Mutter, Norwegian Mor and Far, and Dutch Moeder and Vader. Okay, it's obvious for anyone who pays attention to these languages that they are indeed related to one another. But if we look into other languages outside the language family, we'll still see a pattern. Latin had the words pater and mater, and so do the languages that come from it. Spanish padre and madre, French père and mère, and Catalan pare and mare. Also, we have the word brother, which resembles the Russian brat and Latin frater. And the word sistra is clearly like sister. It won't always be the case that the word remains alike until today. For example, the Russian atiets doesn't sound at all like father, but it is related to the Latin atta, which meant father, but it was used as a form to respectfully address an old man. And what's another word for father in English? Dad. Also, atta was the word in ancient Greek for father. Whoa, so Greek's in on it too? Turns out it is. However, the modern Greek word for father is pateras, and mitera is, you guessed it, mother. As I said before, this relation can also be found in languages of Southern Asia. Namely, the words for father and mother in Sanskrit are Peter and Mater, and in Persian, Pedar and Modar. With all this info from a great number of cognates, scholars have come up with these possible ancestors for these two words. What's more, if you take a look at the numbers of all these languages, you will keep finding correspondences. This didn't seem to surprise the Romans, who believed Latin was originated from Old Greek. They did notice that Latin numbers like sex, septem, and octo were quite like Greek hex, hepta, and octo. But in fact, both Greek and Latin come from a common ancestor. And here's the reconstruction of the words these numbers come from. The theory goes that at some point the Greeks stopped pronouncing the sibilant sounds in the beginning of many words and starting aspirating them. Such is the example of prefixes like hyper, super, and the German über, which have been traced to come from the same Indo-European root, this. That's what gives us words with hyper from Greek and with super, in many cases, from Latin. Studying subtle changes in time and tendencies like these shape the way the language most likely used to be before writing itself. And also by checking texts and seeing how the languages have evolved up to now. This study of language and culture through texts is what's known as philology. One of the first people ever to write about these coincidences was Italian merchant Filippo Sassetti, who around 1585 wrote about some striking similarities he'd found between Italian and Sanskrit: Deva, Dio, for God; Sarpa, Serpe, for snake; Sapta, Sete, for 7; Ashta, Otto, for 8; Nava, Nove, for 9. The list goes on. He was a pioneer in the study of Sanskrit, a language from around 2000 BC that for millennia has served as the liturgical language of Hinduism. But the first person to propose a common origin for Indo-European languages was Marcus Joerys von Boxhorn in 1647. The Dutch linguist wrote about it and called the mythical language Scythian. Unfortunately, his hypothesis didn't spread and not much research was done about it. It wouldn't be until 1813 that the term Indo-European would be coined by British scholar Sir Thomas Young. A long list of people have contributed to the endeavor ever since, and even though the reconstructions may vary depending on the author, they maintain a logical correspondence from one to another. These here are the reconstructions for what would be the first 10 numbers spoken over 5,000 years ago. Exhaustive analysis and comparison during a great span of time have made this possible. We have been able to grasp something unimaginable, figuring out what language was like in a time it left no trace behind it. It shows us how far back our legacy goes, a legacy that our parents have instinctively passed on to us as theirs have, and theirs before them. And how amazing is it how little has changed in 5,000 years, and across such great distances. At times, it seems the generations have a hard time understanding each other. People shape language and change it all the time, because so does the world. But at the core, language seems to hold itself together and guard jealously what's been attained. It refuses to give up its essence, just like life insists on carrying on.